Previously, I defined variables in Java and demonstrated examples of variable declaration and initialization. In this example, a data type of the variable was declared as an integer. Java is a strongly typed language. This means that when you declare and initialize the variables, the compiler checks what kind of values are allowed to be assigned to those variables. If you try to assign a string literal to an integer, the compiler gives an error, saying required type is int, but string was provided. But if you assign a numeric value like 25, this will be accepted by the compiler. In computer, everything is stored in binary, in zeros and ones, so the data type we are declaring specifies sides of the chunk of these ones and zeros. This type also tells the compiler how to interpret the data assigned to the variable. So data types define two things: what sides of the data will be stored in a variable and how the data must be interpreted. In Java we have primitive and reference types. Let's review the primitive data types. Primitives are the simplest data types. They are represented as a fixed number of bits. Java has 8 primitive types. Note that the size of the boolean is dependent on VM implementation. You can see different primitive data types and the details about their representation, size, and range within which their values can vary. Let's discuss the differences between primitives and object types. Primitives have fixed size and can be directly accessed, while objects can be accessed through object reference variables, and they can be dynamically resized. In this example, variable name Josh is not itself object. It is an object reference variable. This reference variable acts as a pointer to an actual object in the memory. So it only refers to an actual object, but it is not itself an object. Objects can contain primitives. We can see a very simple representation of the memory when we declare reference types and primitives. In this object declaration, we can see on the right side of the equality operator the new keyword. New keyword is used to allocate an actual object on the heap memory. We will see what heap means in Java memory in our later videos, but for now we can remember that new keyword actually creates a person object in the memory. So we can see that this Josh variable, which is a reference variable, actually it points to concrete object on the memory. And this object contains name, which is of type string, and another value which is of type integer, and it is primitive. As we see on the picture, the object of type person, which is Josh, includes one primitive and another object reference variable. Note that strings are not primitives, they are objects. Inside this circle, which denotes Josh object, we have this name, which does not include an actual sequence of characters, but this name is a reference variable to another object of type string, which itself contains the name Josh as a string, as a sequence of characters. So this is a simple representation of how objects and primitive values are allocated in memory. In reality, the picture can be much broader and sometimes more complex, but for the purposes of this video, it just gives us general idea of how primitives and objects are located in the memory. In the next videos, we will see more details about primitives, objects, and variables in general.